Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss I Know What You Did Last Summer, the 2021 TV miniseries starring Madison Eisman, Brianne Zhu, I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, forgive me, Bill Heck, Zeke Goodman, Ashley Moore, Fiona Renee, Cassie Beck, and Brooke Bloom, directed by Logan Kibbens, Craig William McNeil, and Ben Seminoff. Now because I'm a newbie, I'm going to just say one thing before I get into this review. It's available on Amazon Prime if anybody doesn't know that this show existed, or as a TV miniseries at best. So let's just get straight into this. We open on the lighthouse, where Lennon, played by Madison Eisman, looking out at the ocean, and gets back in her Jeep and driving away in Waihuna, Hawaii, and almost kills a poor doggy. But she luckily stops on time as we move on to Lennon getting home to her father Bruce, played by Bill Heck, and Margot, played by Brianne Zhu, forgive me if I said that wrong, texting her and she hasn't been home since her sister Allison's death for the past summer. And when she gets into her bedroom, she sees old photos of last summer after graduation and gets encountered by one of her friends, Riley's mother, Courtney, played by Cassie Beck. And she opens the closet doors, and it's written in blood saying, "I know what you did last summer." And we move on to last summer in the after graduation party. Lennon is drunk while her twin sister Allison, also played by Madison Eisman, is dragged there by Bruce, as well as she dances with Margot, which looks like a lesbian kind of dance. And I get the impression Allison is the unlikable one of the two sisters. And the fact that they're on the same screen looked very distracting to me. Lennon tries to hook Allison up with Dylan, played by Zeke Goodman, as he has a crush on Allison, believe it or not. And Lennon makes Allison look hot and tries to put on some makeup on her. And she acts a little melodramatic with Margot dancing with Johnny, who's a character who's actually gay. And Lennon has some fun with Dylan as she fucks him behind Allison's back. And Allison is approached by Johnny and has a drink. And I really don't like these fucking characters, as they come off like assholes in many different ways, and they're just dull. Allison comes up to Dylan and has a drink with him until Lennon gets involved and says Allison doesn't drink, and gets more and more drunk, and Allison walks away for them and into a quiet place, and she knows Lennon fucked Dylan and have an argument about it, and she leaves the party and walks home while Bruce is with the other parents at the other side of the house. And Lennon, Margot, and Riley, played by Ashley Moore, Dylan, and Johnny leave the party because Riley's mother, who happens to be a cop, it's not her mother, but it's Bruce's girlfriend is a cop, is there. And they go on the road drunk driving until they accidentally hit Allison as she's dead, and they realize and Dylan believes it was a goat, as they see Allison's dead body, and they see a car coming as it's Dale, played by Spencer Sutherland, seeing if they need help, and drives away. And this is so stupid. Dylan suggests to call the police, but Riley takes the phone away from him and debate on whether to do so or not. And Dylan suggests putting her in a cave where nobody can find her, as he leave it up to Lennon. And we go back to the argument between Lennon and Allison, and we get back to them on the move to put Allison in a cave while Bruce calls Allison, and they turn off her cell phone, and they put her in the cave for tracking purposes anyways, and they put her in the cave at the beach. And we keep going back and forth between throwing Allison's body in the cave and the argument between Lennon and Allison. And the acting in this show is stiff as hell. They pray to keep Allison in heaven, and it gets interrupted by rats. And why do we keep going back and forth? That was very, very annoying from the get-go, as they say their goodbyes and leave the goddamn cave as they leave the beach after the memorial service for Allison between each other. And again, we go back to the party after the end of the argument with the others going in the car. And why is this dragging, as this episode goes back and forth and takes forever at it, as this whole show is going to keep going back and forth, and it's going to still bug the crap out of me. Episode 2 comes back to the party while Allison runs away, and Lennon gets home to Bruce, and she cries because of Allison's death. And we come back to the mirror saying, I know what you did last summer, as Bruce stops by Lennon's room, and she closes the door on him, and she eventually goes back outside the room, and Courtney gets a dead animal in the trash, and she confesses she likes the people at the school, and she goes to for college, and the editing suddenly gets choppy, and I honestly thought there was something wrong with Prime Video skipping to the next scene, as we get Lennon talking to Bruce about Allison at nighttime, as she wants to go to jail, and Bruce doesn't want her to because he can't lose 2 daughters in one night, and we get to current day when I'm just bored out of my damn mind. Lennon goes outside and meets with Margot, Riley, Johnny, who's now dating their coach from high school, as they're engaged, and nobody has heard from Dylan since high school graduation. And Lennon tells them someone knows, as Johnny wants to go to the police, as they decide to stick with the story they had for the past year, while Margot wants to talk to Johnny, but he keeps walking away, and they eventually make up, as Margot has a security guard looking after her because of her father, who happens to be rich, while Lennon is approached by Clara, as she visits Hannah, and she points where Dylan is at, and she shows up as Dylan's works to show him what happened in the mirror, and he believes they're getting what they deserved while he was there too, and sees a goat, and she's led to believe that Dylan might have wrote the bloody note, and she gets followed by someone until Riley shows up, and this editing is absolutely choppy, as this is getting out of hand. Like, one week after another, it's one bad movie / show after another, and it makes me concerned for the new movie. Johnny hangs out with Margot while she's in the bathtub, and Lennon and Riley get the decapitated goat's head in a trash bag and throw it out, and Riley gives Lennon a drug of some kind, as Bruce works at a diner of some kind, and gets approached by the sheriff in town, who happens to be a woman and is in love with Bruce, which felt bizarre to me. And we move on to Lennon and Allison laying next to each other, and we get some dancing memories, and Lennon cuts herself as it was just a dream, and she wakes up and seriously, this bitch is completely suicidal. And that's how much of a dumb show this is, right out the fucking bat. The woman sheriff asks about if Lennon heard from Allison, which feels disrespectful, while Lennon packs up Allison's stuff and have a talk about how sad Lennon is for the past year. While the next day comes and Bruce sets up cameras as Johnny visits Lennon, and Bruce visits her after Johnny leaving. And this is getting preposterous, as this whole damn show is preposterous. Johnny is driving as Margot FaceTimes him, and something happens that she hangs up, and he tries to call her back and sees Eric is hurt by the weights and falls and injures his arm and gets killed. And Lennon sees Johnny's death live, and that's disgusting, as this show is disgusting. Lennon calls Bruce quite a bit of times as it's urgent, and Lennon gets home and he's humping the sheriff's ass, as Riley is almost killed by Clara, and Lennon, Margot, and Riley meets up with as Margot can't breathe, as she's crying very hard, until Dylan comes up to them, and Allison texted them Johnny's decapitation, as they're led to believe, maybe, to them, as they're saying they're not calling the cops, and they should have done it last year, while Bruce gets a call about Johnny's death, as Dylan takes Riley home, and Margot doesn't want to be alone and wants Lennon to come over, and we flash back to the night of the party, as this is a dumb show that feels similar as the movies, and that's not a good thing. Riley gets home with Courtney being at her house while they're high, and Lennon is pulled over by the sheriff, and she tells Lennon her father has been calling and drives home, while the sheriff drives behind her, and Lennon flips her off, and she gets home, and they argue about how they haven't been trying to keep in touch with each other, and we go back to the night of the party. And why the fuck do we keep flashbacking to that one stupid night? As I'm like, I fucking get it. As the more they repeat, the less I like the show. As we move on to Lennon working at the diner and takes a cigarette break because of how it makes Lennon close to Allison. And why is this not getting to me? Because I don't care for what's happening nor the characters and any of this bullshit whatsoever. Lennon talks about 50 Shades romance between Bruce and the sheriff, and we move on to the sheriff talking with Kelly about how everyone is blaming her for some dumbass reason while Riley is outside and the deputy harasses her. And Courtney picks on the deputy about it, and Riley and Dylan get picked up by a store clerk who I think was Dale. Yeah, it was Dale. And Lennon is approached by Margot, and she's depressed about Johnny as she's worried about Lennon's head being in the same thing. And she tells Lennon to not die while Bruce looks at some footage of a truck following Lennon back home. And Lennon is looking for someone, which is preposterous. Riley and Dylan look for Allison's name until Lennon and Margot show up. And Dylan confesses Allison was breathing before they buried the body in the cave. And Lennon is very upset and takes it out on them and leaves. And the acting in this is very stupid. And the deputy is on the head looking for a human head until the person on the phone hung up and they see Dale is dead. And good fucking riddance, because that motherfucker deserves it after licking on the main characters. Or I mean, like, you know what I'm saying. As they leave the place by splitting up, and the deputy arrives and sees Dale is dead. And this is by far one of the most terrible miniseries shows I've seen for the show, and not counting Danny Boyle's pistol, which I reviewed about a few years back. And we go back to flashbacking to the graduation party, and how often does this show do it? And it keeps going there, and every single motherfucking time, and it bugs the shit out of me. Episode 4 opens with Margot humping Lennon's ass and having sexual intercourse, and we see it all over the internet, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And Lennon comes over to Margot's house and say maybe Allison is going after them. And they talk about what to do about it. And Margot says to Lennon to stay safe. And we all of a sudden flash back to the night of grad night, while the sheriff is on the phone and getting a blowjob by Bruce while talking business, which is absolutely fucking disgusting. As Courtney shows up at the house and Riley shows up to a naked Hannah, who happens to be Dylan's mother. And she's at a thing for nature, and the sheriff hears about Kelly's accusers. And come on, this doesn't make sense. Lennon is in a treehouse she and Allison used to build when they were younger, and freaks out as she thinks it's Allison, while Riley and Dylan talk at a diner, and Lennon looks for Allison as sees her running outside as she goes after her and bumps into the nature people, as she gets pushed into the water and floats in it, and sees a dead body as the sheriff brings her home. And Lennon brings over Margot, Dylan, and Riley, and they talk until Dylan shades her because she fucked her to fuck Allison. And he leaves, and I'm like, Jesus, does this show need to be 8 episodes long and 40 to 50 minutes long each episode? I would probably say hell to the motherfucking no. Bruce goes to Clara and talk about his daughter Lennon, who happens to be getting away from murder, as she protected her as well, and she gets back home, and he gets back home, and Lennon can't deal with what she's done for the past year, and she wants to move on, but she can't, as Bruce finds the necklace from Clara and gives it to Lennon, while the sheriff interrogates Kelly about Dale, as they had a kid together, and he never paid a dime in child support. As Margot records one of her blogs, as her mother helps her recording it, while they found Allison's dead body and have a funeral with Dylan apologizing to Allison. And come on, this drama is so full of shit. The sheriff gets a message from one of the deputies about how Kelly is not the killer. And we move on to a flashback, and I wish I could stop talking about the fucking flashbacks, but this show really needs to stop with the goddamn flashbacks. And we move on to the funeral as Riley is being disrespectful, and she looks for Dylan, and encounters Courtney and continues to look for Dylan, while Lennon walks away from the service as Margot films her blogs and sees Riley and tells her Dylan is on the beach. And we flash back to an argument between Lennon and Margot about fucking Dylan for fun and how fucked it is. And Lennon talks some shit to Margot. And we move on to the current day and have some kind of desert. And Lennon says to Margot how fucked up she was last year and how sorry she is. And they smooch up a storm which felt comedic. Until Bruce comes in, and we move on to nighttime, and they turn Allison into ashes in the ocean until someone screams, and we see a lot of blood from one of the deputies, as this motherfucker is dead. And same with the damn cook, as the main characters get a video of some kind, and I don't give a fuck about any of this bullshit whatsoever. We get Margot eating something bloody, as it turns out it was hot sauce, and eats a shit ton. And we move on to a town meeting and about protecting young men, as Bruce and the sheriff has it sort of handled. And we move on to Dylan marking a rock while Bruce drives Lennon home, and we flash back to Bruce forcing Allison to make friends out of Lennon's friends. And we come back to Lennon texting Margot as Margot comes by Riley's house, and Courtney calls Margot a princess. And she comes inside her house, and this show doesn't make much sense. But it's still better than I Still Know, and I'll always know what you did last summer for sure. Dylan stops by Lennon's house and hugs Bruce like out of the blue because he misses Allison so much, and we flash back to Allison wanting to go home, but he blows her off, and we get back to Lennon looking for a man named Fred, no, it was Lennon who wanted to go. Anyways, this is going to confuse the crap out of me, and at the end, I'll talk about it then. Named Fred, as Margot FaceTimes her and acts like a drama queen while Dylan barges into Lennon's bedroom at her house and brings up how Clara might be the killer, and Lennon talks with Bruce about why Clara was at Allison's funeral, as the sheriff interrogates everyone about Allison's death, while Clara is next on the list, and they talk about going to Clara's house, and this is pretentious. We go back to the night of the party, and Lennon talks with Bruce about telling Allison something that doesn't feel that big of a deal, and we get back to the main characters as they break into Clara's house to look for Allison's phone, and they go back in the backyard and split up, which is a terrible idea from the get-go, as Margot talks with Lennon about how much she's acting bitchier than ever. And do I give a shit? Absolutely fucking not. As Riley and Margot chat about how Lennon is acting like a fucking psycho, while Clara walks out of the police station and Riley scares the shit out of Dylan, as she brings up going back to being normal, and he says there's no normal, and this dialogue is dumb, as this show is completely dumb enough as it is. Nighttime comes in as Lennon sees Bruce married Clara at one point in life, and Clara gets home, and these motherfuckers are so fucked if they get caught. And Dylan starts to realize it and texts everyone while Clara comes in with a shotgun, as Lennon hides from Clara and sends the dogs, or maybe dog, I don't know which one it was, while Lennon escapes with Dylan and Margot coming home and relaxes as her actual mother talks with her about eating in the bathroom, like she did in the past, while Lennon talks with Bruce about he and Clara, as we get to a car ride between Lennon and Bruce, and she says Allison will never forgive her and walks over to Margot's place and crashes there for a while, as she doesn't want to talk to her father. And these scenes in this episode is absolutely pathetic. Episode 6 starts with a missing knife, and we move forward to 12 hours earlier as Riley gets out of Clara's house and Lennon tries to escape from razor wire, which has got to fucking hurt, as Dylan hides from Clara while they're still at Clara's house. Meanwhile, Margot steps on some worms, and Riley gets chased by Clara, and eventually, Clara hits Riley onto the ground, and how the hell does she get out of there is beyond me, as Riley calls her mother for help, and she's led to believe she butt-dialed her. And Riley gets stabbed by the killer, as in this episode, we believe it's Clara. And we move back to the party scene last year, when Allison sees Dylan, and we get this scene rather repeatedly. And is this horror movies or shows for dummies? And we come back to current day, and Courtney wakes up to Riley not making coffee for her, and she's led to believe she might be at a friend's house, while Lennon wakes up and checks her phone next to Margot. And the acting in this is very bad. Margot shows Lennon Fred is on LinkedIn as Margot opens the door, and he wants to speak with Lennon, but she refuses as Courtney looks for Riley and punches Dylan. And Courtney gets to the sheriff's office demanding to look for Riley, but she can do nothing about it. And we flash back with Lennon dancing with Riley to make Dylan jealous. And Margot calls Riley a hoe. And we get back to Lennon, Margot, and Dylan talking about where Riley is at. And Margot leaves for therapy as Bruce is filmed by a journalist to use the bathroom with him until Courtney comes up to Bruce and asks for help to look for Riley, and I could care less for the pain Courtney is going through at this point. Lennon and Dylan look for Riley and talk about the past until they find a doggy licking Riley's dead body. And I just don't care, while Bruce asks Clara to leave town to help her, and he asks about Riley, and she doesn't respond, while Courtney gets a text message of where Riley is at. Well, Margot has guns to kill the motherfucking killer, which is so goddamn stupid in so many levels, as Courtney gets to a trap where she gets killed, and she did kind of annoy me, so I was relieved she died, but the death felt worthless. And Lennon, Margot, and Dylan find out Riley is dead, while the cops look for Clara to find Courtney's dead body. And they get home to Margot pointing a gun at Bruce as he talks with Lennon about he and Clara, and she's not the mother, as her mother is not dead. And no more secrets around each other, and this is very pointless. This is a very pointless addition to the series. Bruce confesses he kicked Allison out of the car to take a walk, and that's how she got killed. As she got inside the house, and Margot sets the alarm while Lennon and Dylan stay with her. While it fooled me moment time, Riley isn't dead yet, which did kind of shock me, and I'll give the show that as a compliment. While we flash back to Dylan and Riley laying next to each other, and he apologizes for her for some reason and says no wonder she says Allison will never fuck her, which is fucked up in so many levels, as Dylan gets out of the house, as Margot is led to believe Dylan is the killer, while going back to the cave where Allison is buried at, and finds something incredibly fucking disgusting, as he finds Clara while Riley's body was found by not only a kid, but Clara of all people. And so much of this is pointless. Episode 7 begins with images of the night at the grad night party, and how Allison got killed, as we see Margot's evidence of Dylan being the killer, while Bruce and the sheriff ask people with guns to not kill Clara, as the people are led to believe she's the killer, as the sheriff asks Bruce if he knows where she is, while Lennon calls her mother, and she says to never contact her ever again, and she hangs up and she pulls on her skin and comes back to Margot and Lennon, confessing the woman on the phone was her mother, as she learns her mother left them all alone and hates Lennon to death. And I get the impression Margot is the killer at this point. And we'll see who the killer is by the end of the next episode, which happens to be the final episode, as Lennon goes to the diner and talks with Bruce, and she confesses what happened to her since she got back home, and he thinks about what Clara might be. And the sheriff and her deputies look for Clara at the beach, and they find Riley's body in the cave all slimed up and shit, as she committed suicide, while Dylan gets back, and by she I mean Clara, while Dylan gets back to the house, and he confesses he found Riley, and we have another funeral for the people that died throughout the show, and I don't care for the acting in this, because it's so damn bad. As Margot goes to a different place because her mother sees her boyfriend or husband, I don't know what the fuck is going on with that, having a cheating after attention problem, And I just don't care anymore for this godforsaken show, but I have to finish it off for the show, otherwise I would have turned the damn thing off and never finished it. 3 weeks later, Bruce humps the sheriff's ass, while Lennon and Margot reunite, and Dylan shows a little girl how a dream catcher works and catches up with Margot along with Lennon, and they dance and they have fun together, and nighttime comes as they have some food, and Bruce and another woman talk about marriage that hasn't happened yet, nor will it be for the show. While Lennon and Dylan go in the water at the beach as Margot gets a call from, and her stepfather Kyle scares the shit out of her and gets her for her mother, which was funny as hell as it was unintentional. And Lennon gets home and hears Dylan coming to her window, and they smooch up a storm as they have sexual intercourse. And I'm just tired of this miniseries at this point. I just want it to fucking end. But I have one more goddamn episode left. Margot masturbates as Lennon as Dylan's first sexual intercourse, and they discuss the worst thing ever happened to them, which is just cringy dialogue. And Lennon, confesses she's Allison, and that's a twist I didn't see coming as he walks out on Allison. And that was a complete what the fuck moment, as it was unfulfilling. While Bruce talks about getting a giant rock on her finger, like J-Lo has, and he walks away as Margot has sugar behind her mother's back, while bringing Cheeto the doggy with her, and she loses the doggy, and Margot gets thrown out by the killer. Well, pushed anyways, and this is very bad from the get-go. Margot gets hospitalized as Lennon comes by to visit her, while Dylan gets rid of Allison's name on the stone, and Bruce sees his ex-wife, aka Allison's mother, come by and learns their daughter is dead, and Dylan tries to talk to the sheriff waiting in the waiting room until the morning comes, and this show is desperate as it's so bad. The final episode starts with Allison disguised as Lennon driving the other characters as Allison purposely killed Lennon while on the side of the road, which felt like a damn cheat of a twist as it was revealed in the last episode. But at the same time, it was a what the fuck moment. As Allison disguised as Lennon talks with Margot as she bullshits her way out of by lying to her about what happened the night before. And Dylan talks with the sheriff about Allison's crimes while Allison gets home to Bruce, and she bullshits her way to lie to him, as she pretends to be Lennon, and she can't believe what Dylan has done to her. And the sheriff visits Margot while on bed rest, asking about the night of the accident, while her mother May calls Bruce about the visit. And Margot tells Allison about Dylan as a fucking narc. And this is such bullshit writing at this point, but not as worse as M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit. That was the worst. While using the restroom, Margot sees the condom from the night before, and I get the impression she figured out Lennon is Allison. And Margot goes to Dylan because she believes him when he says Lennon is Allison, and wonders why she lied to Margot in Dylan's face. And they talk about how Allison's plan worked on them and why, as she grabbed Lennon's computer and asks Dylan to get her to confess it again. And Allison sends a text to someone the article of how Lennon died, as this is absolutely unnecessary. Allison sees her mother for the first time in years, as she's led to believe she's dead, and talks with her mother about why she hate her so fucking much. And she says she was dead while living with them, and that was such fucked up writing in so many levels. And we go back to the night of the grad party as Allison is depressed and visits Margot and says they don't know each other while she records their conversation as Bruce gets home and finds his ex-wife, and she says she saw Allison and says she needs his help. And Bruce doesn't help her along with Margot FaceTiming Dylan to get some kind of confession from Allison. And she looks for her father, and the dialogue in this is so bad. Margot goes to Allison's mother to confess she saw Allison as she searches for her and walks through a bug forest, while Allison grabs a knife because she heard something as someone broke into the house, and it happens to be Dylan, and tells her to confess. And Margot asks her to and Dylan to go to Clara's house to find her, and they get to an area, and Dylan gets knocked out by the killer as Allison finds Margot, and she says Allison hurt her, as she was the one who killed her mother, and stabs Allison along with me, getting confused as to what the fuck is happening at this point, because it makes no goddamn sense. Margot explains why Allison lied to Margot from the get-go, and how she had so many chances to tell the truth, like Dylan said, and Allison knows she fucked up in so many levels. Meanwhile, Dylan is trapped in a room, and how the fuck did he get out of it is beyond me, while the sheriff is called about a situation which is near her and sees Dylan with the gun, and Allison lies to the sheriff along with Margot and arrests Dylan, and Bruce comes by and hears Dylan saying he didn't do it, as Margot and Allison are on an ambulance, and she kisses her head as Dylan is interrogated and goes to jail while Allison gets some rest. And Allison says she's an awful person, and I'm like, yeah, no shit. And Allison and Margot say never leave each other, as Margot goes with Allison being Lennon, and to me that was bullshit. And this final episode was just awful, as was this whole show, and confusing. But how awful was the show? Let's talk about it in a rating. I'll give this show a 2.0 out of 10. The twin sisters being played by Madison Iseman looks very distracting, but Allison will eventually get killed later in the story, and I really don't like these fucking characters, as they come off like assholes in many different ways, and they're just dull. While the acting in this is stiff as hell, and the editing is getting out of hand, like one week after another, I get one bad movie/TV show after another, and it makes me concerned for the new movie. The show is preposterous for damn sure, and just disgusting, and the original movie wasn't this fucking graphic as this dumb show right off the bat, as this is a dumb show that feels similar to the movies, and that's not a good thing. And why do we keep getting flashbacks to the graduation party night is stupid. And the more they repeat it, the less I like this show. The acting in this show is very stupid, like I said, and it keeps going back and forth to the current events, like I just brought up, and flashback to the night of the graduation party, as it was annoying the shit out of me. And this is a solid non-recommendation for the show, as this doesn't make sense. And does this need to be 8 episodes and every single episode 40 to 50 minutes long? Hell to the motherfucking no, as this is absolutely pointless to make this into a TV miniseries, as I'm concerned for the new movie, like I just said. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and I will be back with the 2025 prequels, something like that. We'll see how that goes. Until then, what are you waiting for?